Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Roulette, an Italian Mafia Saga, Book 1. You have successfully found Chapter 4. So, how's it sounding so far? I don't see any comments in the comment box, but that's okay because they're not required. I'm just curious to know what everybody thinks. I hope you all have a blessed day. To all my co-workers at Harry's, front of the house, back of the house, I love all y'all. Gus, Joe, all my back of the house crew, I love y'all. We all do a good job. We hold it down. We stay on the grind. Front of the house, I love y'all too. But nothing further, let's get on with Chapter 4. Roulette, an Italian Mafia Saga, Book 1, like you've never heard before. Donovan was awakened by the loud laughing and chattering of what sounded like girl talk coming from the kitchen upstairs. He looked at his watch. 9:47 a.m. He stretched up and got up, headed upstairs for a nice cold glass of orange juice. The night before, which seemed like just hours ago, was still fresh on his mind. All the way up to the point where he scared the shit out of some loser that Britt invited over. Donovan couldn't get his mind off that guy he called last night. Don Torrio Cabrini. The guy picked up on the third ring, and when Donovan answered the guy's question and told him who he was, that's when things got really serious. So serious that Don Torrio said to come by on Wednesday night. And that was the phone call. Nothing more was said. Donovan rubbed his temples, then opened the door. Britt and her two friends she met last year at Henderson High School were over this morning. Britt told the both of them about what happened last night with Ricardo, about Donovan, and what he did. They knew that Britt's mom was adopting some 16-year-old kid, but Carly and Candace had never seen him since he moved in downstairs. The three of them went up to Britt's room in a hurry to go smoke some good pot and just missed Donovan coming into the kitchen. Donovan casually went into the fridge, took out the quart of Valencia pure orange juice, took a tall glass from the cabinets, and poured himself a full glass. Candace came back downstairs to get her pink Zippo lighter from the kitchen where she left it while Britt rolled a fat cigar of Mandarin Sunset. She rounded the corner and slammed on the brakes, ducking back around the corner like a silent cat. Did she really just see what she thought she saw? Candace peered around the corner into the kitchen and her mouth fell open. There in the kitchen, in a pair of dark black silk boxers and nothing else, was the hottest guy she had ever seen in her life. Candace looked at this guy. Bald, naturally tanned complexion, a hard-toned body, muscular shoulders like football pads on a junior varsity high school running back in his prime. A flat but seriously chiseled 8-pack set of abs. This kid was leaned back, eyes closed, and slowly drinking a full glass of orange juice in nothing but boxers. His chest was sculpted and chiseled and full of tight meat lines. "Oh my God," Candace whispered, then silently ran back upstairs in haste with her lighter in her hand over her mouth. She busted into Britt's fogged-up room. "What the hell, Candy?" Britt asked in an irritated tone, passing the blunt to Carly. Candace grabbed Carly by the left arm, pulled her to her feet in haste, and then dragged her downstairs in a hurry. "Shh," Candace said, then continued to drag her friend toward the kitchen. They stopped at the corner, and Candace looked around as the smoke from the blunt in Carly's hand trailed into the air. The kitchen was empty. "Where'd he go?" Candace asked, looking around. "Who, Candace?" Carly asked in a careless, I'm high tone of voice. Carly turned around to head upstairs and shrieked from being startled by someone stepping into her path. "I'm sorry," Donovan said. "Carly," she said, not sure what's going on right now, but clearly sane enough to know what she sees right now. "I'm Carly Ray." Britt came up unseen as the three of them were right there outside the kitchen. Oh, good morning, Donovan, Britt said, taking her blunt from Carly and heading back upstairs. Both girls watched as this bald terminator of a teenage boy made his way toward the stairway door and out of sight. They both ran back upstairs and into Britt's room, closing the door behind them in haste. That's the kid your mom adopted? Carly asked as her heart pounded in her chest. That's Donovan, Britt replied in a careless tone. Wait, so that guy? The one that we just saw? He did that to Ricardo last night? Candace asked in shock and attraction. Yes, Britt said with an attitude. Now can we please shut up about him? Girl, your new brother is so fucking hot, Carly said with lust covering her tongue like caramel on ice cream. Okay, if you ever call him my brother again, Carly, you and me are seriously gonna fight, Britt replied in disgust. Donovan knew he had to go shopping for some clothes today, among other things. He loved the nice Italian designer outfits that Miss Rochellio bought for him. There were at least 12 sets of outfits neatly hanging inside the walk-in closet. Three-piece Armani suits, a couple Ferragamo suits, and some casual Versace outfits. But they were all very nice. His phone rang and he looked at the screen. Private number. Donovan answered it. Hello? Donovan asked. Donovan Lovato. A male voice with a heavy smoker's tone asked. Depends. Who's this? It doesn't matter. Meet me outside of town. Go 2 miles south past the welcome sign and wait. 11 o'clock sharp. The call ended. Donovan was suspicious. Too suspicious. But now he has a blind date with a stranger. Time to get dressed for the dance. He got a shower, got dressed in a pair of freshly starched and pressed Thug Life brand raw blue jean shorts, a nice Carolina blue Hanes tank top that would clearly leave little for the imagination of Britt's two friends upstairs. He slipped on a pair of black ankle socks and a pair of white lugs convoy wide 6-inch boots, grabbed his wallet, the money clip full of 100s, slipped on his belt with his knife sheathed inside his shorts, gave himself a couple of sprays of Sexual Pour Homme by Michelle Germain and let it rain down on him, then looked at his watch. 10:21 a.m. Time to go, somehow. Britt and the girls were in the kitchen stuffing their faces with fresh grilled cheese sandwiches and baked pizza bites, and talking about Donovan when he walked in the living room to find them laughing. Hi, Donovan, Candace said with a come fuck me smile on her face. Yeah, hi, sexy, Carly said, being her straight to the point self. Then all the girls laughed. And what? Donovan didn't know. Donovan stepped to Britt as she was laid back on the couch with her What the Fanta Slurpee and a bag of white chocolate-covered pretzels. Donovan reached down and Britt playfully slapped his hand away. Can't you ask first? Britt said, then laughed at him, tossing him the bag. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for what I did last night. That was very disrespectful, Donovan said in a sincere tone, then popped some pretzels in his mouth as the other two girls watched like there was nothing more magnificent to feast their eyes on other than this 16-year-old guy. It's cool. So what's up? Britt asked, taking her bag back from Donovan. You got plans today? Donovan asked, and Carly sat up in a jolt. Yes, we're going to the fashion show mall in about an hour. You want to come? Britt, I need you to take me to meet someone right now. I got to meet someone by 11 a.m. Fine, come on, Britt said with a sigh, then got her phone and looked at the screen. Carly and Candace gathered the clutter they helped make and cleaned up for Britt in about 3 seconds, then stopped at their side. Britt's two friends dressed just as naughty as she does, and neither one of them was anything short of bad. Carly is a hot ginger with deep blue eyes and country girl freckles all over her face. And Candace is a gorgeous brunette with deep but big brown eyes. Britt, we're going to the tanning bed, and we'll meet you both at the fashion show mall. Bye, Donovan, Carly said, then softly kissed Donovan on the left cheek. Girl, have you lost your fucking mind? Don't be kissing my man, Candace said, pulling Carly by the right arm toward the door. Your friends are, Donovan began. They're crazy about you. I can't imagine why, Britt replied with attitude. Come on. Donovan told Britt where he needed to go, and at about 6 minutes till 11, she stopped her car on the southbound side of the road, 2 miles past the Welcome to Las Vegas sign as he was instructed. There was nothing out here but desert, vegetation, and mountainous terrain. Who are you meeting here? Britt asked in a calm, pleasant tone, looking at him briefly. Don't know. The caller said to meet him here, Donovan replied, and Britt turned in her seat to face him, whipping her hair over her right shoulder to her back. So, you made me bring you way out here and you don't know who the fuck it is? Are you serious right now? Britt said in a playful but angry tone. Something caught Britt's attention and she looked from the rear view to her driver's side mirror. She looked at Donovan and he knew something was up. He looked behind them and watched as a dark gray 2022 Mercedes GL 450 SUV with dark tinted windows drove by and pulled off the road about 15 feet in front of Britt's car and stopped. Who's that, Donovan? Britt asked. I don't know. Stay here, Donovan said and got out of the car. He started to go and then turned around. Look, I really don't know who's in that car. Here. Britt watched Donovan pull out his huge knife, the same one that was almost used to cut Ricardo's dick in half. He held it out to her, and she took it. She knew that he was protecting her. Be careful, Donovan, Britt said as he headed toward the car. Donovan made his way to the awaiting SUV, seeing his own reflection in the sleek gray color as he reached the right rear side door. The door opened, and he slowly looked inside. There were 4 men inside. One of them was a man with close-cropped, wavy gray hair puffing on a log cigar. The expensive navy blue 3-piece Salvatore Ferragamo suit was a dead giveaway. Next to him was a huge guy that had to be his muscle. The guy was at least 6'7" and 289 pounds. That Hawaiian luau shirt he had on over a pair of black dress pants was a real attention getter. Donovan hid a smirk as he looked to the guy that looked no more than 4'11". This guy sat cold-faced and quiet as he sipped on a glass of what looked like scotch. And lastly, the guy next to the small fry was a casual-looking man in a nice smoky gray 3-piece Armani suit. All of them stared at this kid in the doorway like he was a ghost come back from the dead. Donovan Lovato? The old-timer asked. Yes, sir, Donovan replied, unsure of how he really felt. Get in. Donovan stepped in and sat down between the small fry and the other guy as the door closed. He looked around again and then looked down at the liquor cabinet. Get a drink, kid, the eldest man said. Donovan fixed himself a glass of Hennessy on the rocks and took a good swig as the eldest put out his cigar and cleared his throat. Donnie? May I call you Donnie? The eldest one asked with a calm and welcoming greeting. Yes, sir, Donovan said, then placed his glass back with the others. I guess. Donnie, my name's Max Denisi, and I knew your dad. Donovan's demeanor changed to one of suspicion and growing anger as he leaned forward to look this man in the face. Clear blue eyes set in a face worn with age, but he looked like he earned every wrinkle. How do you know my dad? Donovan asked, stone-faced and calm as he slowly sat back. Anastasia Rochelio. You know her? She adopted me and brought me to live with her yesterday, Donovan replied, slowly opening up. That her daughter Brittany there? Denise asked. Yes, sir, but how do you know all this? Donovan asked, curious. Donnie, I met your old man back in 1987 when he was 11 years old. Saturday, January 10th, 1987, Manhattan, New York City. Max Denisi was in a part of Manhattan that was a regular Mafia hangout owned by Carlo Gambino and dedicated to Carlo's favorite poet, Edgar Allan Poe, for his poem The Raven. This place was called the Ravenite Club. This place was bugged by the feds and studied to gain all the evidence needed to put the Teflon Don, John Gotti, behind bars for life. April 1st, 1991, just after 13 hours, the jury had its verdict. Guilty of racketeering and murder. The verdict finished off the 6-year crusade by prosecutors and law enforcement to convict the Teflon Don. On June 23, 1992, a jury sentenced John Gotti to life in prison. Gotti regularly spent time here in the social club that Max is in. 2 years ago, on the evening of December 16, 1985, at 5:26 p.m., John Gotti had 4 men dressed in black Russian Cossacks and tan trench coats post up and wait. John Gotti was in an off-white Lincoln sedan, parked a few vehicles away to watch. Paul Castellano drove right past John Gotti with Thomas Bilotti in the passenger seat. They were on their way to Sparks Steakhouse. They never made it. Before the 2 men could get out of the now parked black car, 4 men came up and fired a countless array of bullets at near point-blank range, killing both Paul Castellano, the boss of the Gambino crime family, and Thomas Bilotti, a Gambino underboss for only 2 weeks. It was this promotion that helped trigger the 1985 assassination of Gambino boss Paul Castellano. Thomas Bilotti would end up killed as well as part of the assassination. Denisi and several of his soldiers were talking about life, and nothing more needs to be said. Max was 32 in 1987. Joey Tomas was a longtime friend of Denisi that went back to his 20s. In 1975, the Mafia in America was busy growing in power and contempt for disrespect against those who brought resistance against their agendas and plans to profit off organized crime. On June 13, 1975, Salvatore Sam Mooney Giacana, the leader of the Chicago outfit, was murdered inside his Oak Park, Chicago, Illinois home. The following month, Gambino crime family captain and acting boss Paul Castellano and 8 other associates were charged with forming an enterprise that was designed to operate by collecting debts that had resulted from usurious loans. On June 30th, 1975, Jimmy Hoffa reportedly attempting to make peace with Mafia associates, most likely Anthony Provenzano, and a couple others in his attempts to regain his position as president of the Teamsters Union, departed for a meeting at a restaurant called the Mockus Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. The last known contact was a phone call to his wife around 2:15 p.m. before Hoffa disappeared and was never seen again. 2 months later, Carmine Consalvo of the notorious Gambino crime family and a large-scale cocaine dealer was heaved right out the window of his home in Jersey for not only ceasing to quit pushing dope against the orders of the Mafia, but he refused to share the profits. Carmine's brother Frank was later murdered by a member of the Gambino family for attempting to avenge his brother's death. Max Denisi was 20 years old and had not only earned street credit in the Mafia, but he had made a name for himself. Denisi was born to Gianna and Tommaso Denisi in Naples, Italy in 1955. Maxwell was 10 years old when he and his parents entered America through New York City. Tommaso immediately found work at Idlewild Airport, and his wife had a job at Bellevue Hospital. The Denisi home was normal, or so it seemed. Tommaso knew what to do about money. The 5 families of New York were busy controlling rackets, and Tommaso was getting paid from smuggling drugs through airport security. At this time, the Genovese crime family maintained a considerable amount of control over Manhattan, New York, as well as the Gambino crime family and the boss at the time, Carlo Gambino, from 1957 to 1976, got word of what was going on in that airport through one of his soldiers. Carlo Gambino and Tommy Three Finger Brown Lucchese had a sit down to discuss how they could handle this. Gambino's eldest son had just married Lucchese's daughter, Frances, and therefore they both had a say in the matter and it's being resolved. A master of deception and Machiavellian intrigue, Carlo Gambino would eventually eclipse all he came in contact with as he rose to become the most powerful mafioso of his time. After Genovese was sent to prison, Gambino took control of the commission. Carlo Gambino despised narcotics so deeply because it brought unwanted attention that his choice of punishment for such betrayal by a family member was death. In the 60s decade, Carlo Gambino had 500 soldiers and 1,000 associates under his control. In 1962, Carlo's eldest son, Thomas Gambino, wed the daughter of Tommy Lucchese, Frances. Over 1,000 guests attended the ceremony where Carlo Gambino gave Lucchese a $30,000 gift. In return, Tommy Lucchese gave Carlo a part of his rackets at Idlewild Airport, other known as JFK International. Lucchese controlled airport security and all the airport unions. The two bosses duoed and now controlled the airport, the commission, and most organized crime in New York City. Friday, September 7th, 1975. Tomaso was on his way home from Idlewild Airport. He was headed toward the door that would take him to where he was parked. 4 men in expensive-looking dark suits and tan trench coats stealthily but casually came up behind him and directed Tomaso to a car that pulled up as the 5 men stepped outside the door in the evening light. People coming and going saw the swift move of the Mafia hand as the 5 men entered the car and sped away, but only 4 men knew that hand was Carlo Gambino's. 3 days later, Tommaso Denisi was found in an alley in Queens, New York. The cops found 5 black garbage bags. Each bag contained a body part. They opened the last one and found the head of Tommaso with 5 bullet holes in his forehead. But the hands were mailed to Tommaso's wife with a note that let her know they knew where she lived. If she talked, she'd be next. As young Max Denisi grew up, his heart and his life would never be the same. He was 20 years old now, and he didn't have any friends that were not affiliated with one of New York's 5 families. The murder of Max's father, and now with only a hard-working but unprosperous mother to support the house, Max began running with a Gambino associate named Joe Salvantino. The two of them ran loan sharking rackets, and what got the attention of Carlo Gambino on Denisi was the fact that he had pulled in $100,000 in under 2 months, and sent Carlo Gambino $40,000 as a payment to let Denisi run a prostitution racket for a 15% cut of his money, seeing it was on Gambino's turf anyway. Carlo Gambino consented. About 2 months into Denisi's racket, 2 undercover cops that had a problem with the control of Carlo Gambino came up to Denisi. That wasn't Denisi's concern. But when those 2 New York cops threatened him with physical harm if he didn't pay them Gambino's cut to look the other way, he already knew what he was going to do. Denisi told these 2 cops that he would meet them at Robert's Lounge on Lefferts Boulevard in South Ozone Park, Queens at 8 a.m. The next day, 2 plain-clothed cops came inside. There were 2 men in business suits chatting away at a table with nearly clean plates of food crumbs. The cops took a seat in the back booth, joining Denisi for what they thought would be coffee and communication. The 2 men these cops paid no attention to got up and made their way to the table, pulled Glock 9mm out of their coats, and the cops turned around to a fury of rounds, unloading on them as they sat there in that booth. Denisi and those 2 men left the little diner, and then Salvantino introduced Denisi to Agnello Della Croce, who was an underboss to Carlo Gambino, and Denisi was made into the Gambino crime family shortly before the death of Carlo the following year. Denisi would break off from the Gambino family in 1985 after the murder of successor of Carlo Gambino, Paul Castellano, was murdered by the orders of John Gotti. Saturday, January 10th, 1987. Joey Tomas has been working this diner and regular mob hangout in Manhattan called the Ravenite Club at 247 Mulberry Street for a long time. On Christmas Eve in 1985, days after the murder of Gambino boss Paul Castellano, The FBI watched as 200 members and associates in the Gambino family stopped by to pay homage to the new boss, John Gotti. The FBI later planted a bug in the hallway and in an upstairs apartment used by Gotti. Max Denisi and several other well known Italian mobsters from the Genovese family, as well as his own family, were just hanging out this morning talking about business. There are 5 mafia families in a single city that are competing for the same racks and the same dollar. That's thousands of mobsters trying to make as much money as possible. So there will be some problems. For example, a crew in one family might be trying to take over the construction on a new building, while a crew in another family is trying to do the same. There is often something called the sit down, which is basically 2 members of different families sit down at a restaurant, although it can be a walk around the block and a talk or another method to avoid law enforcement surveillance, and negotiate and peacefully come up with a solution to the problem. This morning, a little kid came waltzing right on in from what looked like a long, hard night with nothing to eat. The kid didn't smell too good either. There was an awkward silence across the Ravenite Club as everyone just watched this kid walk right up to Max Denisi and look at him right in the eyes, raise his shaky left hand and grab both biscuits, then run toward the door. Hey, kid, you hungry? Come back and eat, Max said in Italian as the laughing continued. The kid munched on one of the 2 biscuits as he returned to that table. Crumbs fell to the floor all the way to where that plate of half-eaten breakfast was. The conversation went on as Max pushed the kid a plate, and then the kid sat down at an empty table and ate. A kitchen door swung open. Hey, kid, get out of here. This ain't no soup kitchen. Hey, Denisi, do you think this is a pickery? Joey Tomas said in a raised tone. Tomas, can't you see the kid is hungry? Anyway, who protects this pickery of yours, huh? Let the kid eat. Denisi replied, and Tomas returned to the kitchen in anger, cursing in Italian. The kid ate like he hadn't eaten in days, but Max was somehow drawn to this kid. Hey, kid, what's your name? Enrico Santori asked. Antonio, the kid replied with a full mouth. Hey, come on, kid. Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Max asked, laughing. Don't got any, Antonio replied. What do you mean you don't have any parents? Where do you live? Max asked, and the kid just pointed out the door. Denisi took 11-year-old Antonio Lovato under his wing on that Saturday in January of 1987 and taught Lovato how to earn street credit by shylocking and scoring jobs within the Mafia as a growing associate. On Antonio's 17th birthday, 11/17/1993, he is given a chance to be made into the Denisi organized crime family by being introduced to his first murder. Giorgio Cucciara, a small-time Manhattan shylocker, had been putting pressure on Joey Torino, a small-time pool hall owner trying to make an honest dollar to feed his wife and kids. Cucciara was in with Denisi for 50 large at 20% interest, and that was generous to Denisi. If you thought Tommy Three Finger Brown Lucchese was cold when it came to overdue debts, meet Max Denisi. Cucciara had a gambling debt, and now a mafia debt that was not only 2 months overdue, but Cucciara was running an extortion game on one of Denisi's closest longtime friends, who bailed Denisi out on a trigger pulling which would have been a successful assassination by a Genovese soldier over a narcotics racket had it not been for Torino. So instead of payment plus interest, Denisi wants to close on this deal. 17-year-old Antonio Lovato earned the name Bricks after beating Cucciara to a pulp with a wooden Louisville slugger. Then he strapped 8 cinder blocks to Cucciara's feet and shoved him half dead off the top of the Manhattan Bridge. And that was it. Later that same night, Antonio now stood in the 2-car garage of Max Denisi's 2-story home on 1.3 acres with 22 bedrooms and 16 bathrooms out in Long Island, New York. There are about a dozen other men present. Joey, Bazooka Joe Cipriano, Denisi's consigliere, Enrico Santori, a soldier, Louis Cellini, a soldier, Fat Tony Salarizzo, a soldier, Dino Calabrese, a capo hoping to be elevated to underboss, Mickey Spicola, a soldier, Leo Giordano, a capo, Giorgiano Valtorres, a soldier, and Giuseppe Luciano, another soldier. Max Denisi approached young Antonio with an image of the Virgin Mary. Antonio, this is the vow of silence. You are to take an oath that you will always obey the commands of me, your boss, and you are about to become a man of honor. Please prick your finger twice, Denisi said, then handed Antonio a small pin. Antonio pricked his finger twice and was instructed to place 2 drops of blood on the image of the Virgin Mary. The image was then placed in the palm of Antonio's left hand. He watched as Denisi lit the image and it began to burn. Antonio, this is an oath that you are telling us, your brothers, that you hope to burn as this saint if you ever betray us. They are your brothers. I am your father. We are your family, Denisi said. To break this oath means death. So like I says, I knew your dad very well, and I'm going to look after yous, Donovan. Anything you need, Denisi asked. Who are these 3? Donovan asked, looking to the others in the SUV. This grande scamilla is Fat Tony, Denisi said, pointing to his left. Fat Tony Salarizzo was born in 1962 in central Brooklyn, other known as Flatbush. He began a life of crime by hanging out with hoodlums and running a small shylocking racket. Fat Tony was still so big and tall at the age of 19, people didn't dare refuse to pay. In 1981, there was one guy who owed Tony, a guy named Tito Moreno, a Sicilian. So Tony just grabbed Tito up by his ankles and held him upside down outside his 4-story apartment window, then shook him until Tito told him where the $28,000 he owed is, or he would start breaking bones. After 2 broken forearms, Tony got paid and left. One of the guys that Tony ran with was an associate of the Colombo crime family. The boss at that time was Carmine Persico. Carmine participated in the murder of Mad Hatter Anastasia in 1957. Persico did 8 years in prison on hijacking and loan sharking charges, only to get out in 79. Then returned again to federal prison in 81 on charges of bribing an IRS agent while in federal custody. But the man was nobody to play with. Tony was recognized by another Brooklyn operating family, the Gambino family. It was still 1981, and Paul Castellano was the boss. Back in 1980, Paul Castellano ordered the murder of Frank Amato, his former son-in-law, for physically abusing Castellano's daughter Connie when they were married. Rumor had it, though, through the FBI, that Gambino soldier Roy DeMeo did it. But when Paul Castellano found out that it was really Tony Salarizzo who cut up the corpse and got rid of the remains of Amato, Paul invited Salarizzo to the Berry Pizza Supply at 234 Bowery. Mafia commissions took place inside this building, and the feds knew it. They saw the coming and going of Mafia members to and from this business. By the early 1980s, the Mafia's last generation of godfathers were in serious trouble. Hounded by the state and federal anti-organized crime units and a new law called RICO, the old but wily mob bosses relied on an elaborate system of clandestine meetings and secret conferences to manage their illicit kingdoms. Known as the Commission, the dons of the 5 families met to approve murders, settle beefs, air grievances, make new members, and most importantly, to divide the proceeds from the biggest cement and construction jobs in New York City. The feds wanted to bust up the Mafia Commission with the help of RICO, but first they had to catch the bosses in the act. With over 300 special agents, 100 NYPD organized crime detectives, and the New York State Organized Crime Task Force, chasing the commission often got chaotic. On June 13, 1983, The FBI, the NYPD, and the New York State Organized Crime Task Force were literally tripping over themselves to surveil a commission meeting set for the Berry Restaurant Supply Company located on the Bowery. Tony Salarizo made Tony Salarizo met another made Gambino soldier by the name of Max Denisi, only to follow him after the death of Paul Castellano and the succession of John Gotti as the new Gambino boss. And that guy there is Louis Cellini, Denisi said, pointing to the short Italian on Donovan's right. A guy would rather die in a large cage, full of full-grown diamondback rattlesnakes, than to be left to feel the mercy of the saw. Louis Cellini grew up out in the borough of the Bronx, which was shared by all 5 families of New York. Recruitment gangs often were the first ones you might meet if you wanted connections to higher powers. Louis indeed had a criminal record which consisted of assaults and robberies, only to go to prison for his first time after being busted running a drug and prostitution racket by the age of 23. He did 9 years and met Denisi after he got out in 1983. Denisi was still a Gambino soldier at the time, but Lou was taken into the Denisi organized crime family after Cellini exposed a government informant by the name of Carlo Brass Fists Rotunda. In 1981, Frank Funzi Thierry, a Genovese capo and Gambino ally, became the first Mafia boss to be convicted under the new RICO Act and died in prison later that same year. After Thierry's imprisonment, the family reshuffled its leadership. The capo of the Manhattan faction, Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, became the new front boss. Lombardo, the de facto boss of the family, soon retired, and Gigante, the trigger man on the failed Costello hit, took actual control of the family, though Salerno was the front boss for the first half of the decade. In 1985, New York State Attorney General Rudolph Giuliani set his sights on taking down the Mafia Commission through wiretaps, cooperating witnesses, and surveillance cameras. The same year, Salerno was convicted in the Mafia Commission trial and sentenced to 100 years in federal prison. In 1986, shortly after Salerno's conviction, his longtime right-hand man, Vincent the Fish Caffaro, turned informant and told the FBI that Salerno had been the front boss for Gigante. Rotunda was getting word to Vincent the Chin Gigante that a Gambino soldier named Max Denisi was running a number of rackets, such as garbage truck extortions, construction companies, seeking labor peace, Teamsters and labor unions, and accepting protection payoffs, which meant that Gigante's money was going somewhere else instead of to him. On April 13, 1986, Gambino crime family underboss Frank DeCicco was killed when his car was bombed following a visit to Paul Castellano loyalist James Fela. The bombing was carried out by Victor Amuso and Anthony Casso of the Lucchese crime family under the orders of Gigante and Lucchese boss Anthony Corallo. Max Denisi was supposed to be in that car with DeCicco that day, but something came up and Denisi couldn't make it. Louis Cellini knew how to get the streets to talk. One night, about a week later, Louis Cellini came by the Gemini Lounge at 4021 Flatlands Avenue out in Brooklyn, and there was Max Denisi with a group of his own soldiers. Cellini brought in a nicely wrapped package and handed it to one of the soldiers. "I'm the one that shut him up to keep the heat off you," Cellini said, then smiled and left. "The other guy's Enrico Santori," Denisi said, then took a sip of his drink. Enrico Santori, born in 1959 but now a soldier of the Denisi organized crime family, grew up with a more constructive mind than most hoodlums in the days of his prime. Santori wanted to get into the prize ring and do big things, so while training during the day for 6 and 7 hours a day, and then running gambling rackets and shylocking rackets through Queens, New York at night, the money started to open up new doors for Enrico. It wasn't until Enrico was arrested at the age of 19 for gambling rackets by the police when they caught him with $50,000 in cash and a fully loaded Cobra Agent 38 special. He did a 6-year stint and came out in 1984 at the ripe age of 25. On March 30th, 1984, Big Paulie Castellano and 23 other individuals are indicted by the Southern District of New York in relation to crimes committed by members of and associates to a crew headed by a Gambino soldier, Roy DeMeo. The 78 count indictment accused the individuals of a variety of racketeering acts, including extortion, loan sharking, and over 25 murders. In April, Caesar Bonventre, the youngest capo in the Bonanno crime family, is murdered. Bonanno underboss and future successor to Phil Rastelli, Joe Big Joey Massino, feared Bonventre's growing power and wealth and felt Bonventre might make a move to seize control of the family since Massino was on the lam for an indictment at the time. Named in an indictment issued on April 9th, charging Bonventre and others with involvement in the Pizza Connection case. Bonventre fails to appear and is assumed to be hiding out to avoid arrest. However, FBI agents discovered human remains stuffed into 3 60-gallon drums in an office building in Garfield, New Jersey on April 17th. By sometime in early May, the remains are positively identified by fingerprints as Bonventre's. He apparently had $1,600 in cash on him at the time of his murder, which was left untouched. This was the life of New York in 1984. Enrico continued to use what he'd learned as a young boxing trainee to make a name that he wanted all 5 boroughs of New York to know. Enrico began running dope rackets and shylocking rackets again, and eventually met up with a soldier from the Gambino family, Max Denisi. Enrico would later be made into the Denisi organized crime family in 1990 after the removal of 6 jury members that were to render a verdict against Max Denisi for being fingered as one of the gunmen in the murder of con artists Nicolino and Michael Lysak in retaliation for killing soldier Robert Russo. Max Denisi was acquitted of that charge and walked out of that New York federal courthouse a free man after 3 weeks of solid testimony from anonymous Italians. Now that you know who we are, Donnie, I've got a little something for you, Denisi said, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small but stuffed white envelope, then held it out to Donovan. A little gift. Donovan accepted the envelope, then looked inside. All of it, 100s. He looked back at Max with question. How much is this? Donovan asked, suspicious. 10 grand, and it's all yours, Denisi replied with a devilish smile. Donovan took another look, then shook his head and attempted to hand it back. Hold on, Donnie. Think about this. I just told you about your dad. Things you didn't know. I'm the only family you've got. If you want nothing to do with finding out who you really are, then you can give that back and get out of this car and you'll never hear from me again. But that doesn't change who you are. Who am I since you know so much? Donovan asked in a growing anger as he sat there holding that envelope of money. That part you have to deal with, Denisi said. Then Enrico opened the right rear door. Is this it? Donovan asked. I'll be in touch. Embrace who you are, Donnie, Denisi said, and the door closed behind Donovan. Britt held the knife and then tossed it into the passenger seat as Donovan headed back to her car. He pocketed the envelope and the car started as he got in. Who is that, Donovan? Britt asked, curious. Just business, Donovan asked, resheathing his knife. I don't know what you got going on, but you better be careful. The Fashion Show Mall rests on Las Vegas Boulevard and has 236 stores to suit your every desire. Sit-downs, fast casual, or snacks and drinks. Experience al fresco dining options situated right on the Las Vegas Strip. There's exclusive access to multiple dining terraces, a lush walking path, and the exciting energy of the bustling city. Fashion shows, food court, and many restaurant options offer an exceptional experience for any occasion. Some of the most popular dining spots are the Galpao Gaucho Brazilian Steakhouse, Luke's Lobster, the Capitol Grill, Maggiano's Little Italy, Benihana, RA Sushi, Strip Burger, El Segundo Soul, The Pizza Press, and Stick and Shakes. Strip side drinks and cigars may be enjoyed at Davida of Geneva. Runway shows at Fashion Show Las Vegas and in-store demos and classes, as well as a wide variety of entertaining activities, are always being offered. Britt pulled into a parking space outside the mall that was already busy with people with a free day to just enjoy today, not knowing if her friends are here yet or not. Thanks, Britt. I really needed to get some new fits for school, Donovan said as they got out. You're springing for lunch, dork, Britt said, then smiled at him with a flirtatious smile. The two of them went up the long stretch of stairs leading to the entrance and went inside. There were lots of people already here. Donovan and Britt went from store to store for almost a solid hour before Carly called Britt and asked where they were. A couple minutes later, the girls gleefully ran towards Britt and didn't bother holding the energy down as they hugged. Hi, sexy, Candace said and gave Donovan a hug. Carly just walked up to him and kissed him on the cheek. The four of them spent the next 4 hours shopping and going from store to store to look. Britt was appalled at how both of her friends drugged Donovan into Victoria's Secret and purposely tried on some of the naughtiest bras and thongs to model for Donovan, which he enjoyed to say the least. The four of them went to get some food at Galpao Gaucho Brazilian Steakhouse. While they were eating, Donovan took some Dr. Pepper in his straw and purposely blew it in Britt's face as she sat next to him while Carly was telling a story. The girls laughed and took a snap of Donovan and Britt hunched together with soda on her face. A memory snapshot. Donovan spent $3,600 on clothes, jewelry, and fits and things for school. But now, with $13,300 in cash to his name, he was ready. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for your support. To all of you at work, thank you for just making me feel welcome because I love my job and I love all of you. I'm out.